Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is Fantastic Four, issue number 261, dated December 1983. And this is definitely one of the issues that influenced the new Fantastic Four movie. The movie came out about 2 weeks ago from the date that I'm doing this. I did see it. I thought it was a pretty good film. It was definitely the best of all the Fantastic Four films. It did seem a little odd, and I think some of that oddness was based on the history of adaptating the Fantastic Four from the comics to the screen. You never want to say, well, I'm glad that person's not here anymore, but I'm kind of glad Jack Kirby never saw some of those adaptations. I know he wanted to really put this comic to the screen, but the poor guy just would have been in tears if he had seen some of those Fantastic Four films. And the Roger Corman film was not the worst of them. But in terms of the new one, I thought it was a really good film. It was a little odd. And one of the oddnesses was that it was really not, the setting really wasn't in the Marvel universe proper. It was definitely in one of the multiverses. So unlike, say, Spider-Man No Way Home, where other Spider-Mans came into the MCU proper, because the Sam Raimi films were pretty good. So there was nothing to be ashamed of with either one of the first two Spider-Mans. So it was fine bringing those guys in. I got the sense that the MCU, they will never do that with the Fantastic Four. The one by Tim Story, the one by, what was it, Trank? I forgot the other guy's name. That one was really terrible. And the Roger Corman one. I don't think those guys are ever going to come into the multiverse. But it seems like the Fantastic Four, this iteration of the Fantastic Four, at some point will be going into the Marvel Universe proper, because they are going to be showing up in Avengers Doomsday. So they're bringing in Doctor Doom, finally. So anyway, my impressions of the film was it was a good film. I did like some of the characterizations, particularly the Invisible Woman. That was Vanessa Kirby. She did a very good job. And also, I forgot the actor's name, but the guy who played Johnny Storm, he did a really good job with a character that is really easy to screw up, because Johnny Storm is not a terribly likable character. Marvel found that out when they tried to spin him off into his solo adventures. They never went anywhere, and it was actually the Thing that was sort of the breakout star of the Fantastic Four. I wasn't terribly impressed with the actor who portrayed the voice of the Thing. That was probably, I thought, maybe the weakest part of the casting. But yeah, the Invisible Woman and the Human Torch, it was a well casted decisions on the movie makers. The story was fine. The Herald thing with the Silver Surfer, kind of combining the Silver Surfer with Nova. I didn't really care for that. The female Silver Surfer kind of looked really bad. Space tits don't really work for me. Just like duck tits didn't really work for me in Howard the Duck. Reed was fine. I know the actor's really popular, and he's done a lot of good stuff. He was one of the few good positive things in Wonder Woman 84, but he was fine. Some of the problems I had with the film was that they didn't really show off the Fantastic Four's powers. So I never really got into fully invested in the story because there was way more talking than there should have been, and I never felt that they highlighted the characters' powers. Galactus, I guess Galactus was fine. I noticed there were some amalgamations from other characters. One was in Marvel Team Up. If you remember, there was a really good two-part arc involving the living monolith, and there was the scene where the living monolith was, walking down Broadway in Manhattan, and there was a little bit of that. Galactus tended to be as powerful or as weak as he needed to be. That's usually not a good sign of good storytelling. When you notice the plot conveniences. And some people had some problems with the CGI. I thought it was fine. I'm not really one to kind of look closely at the CGI. Also, I had problems looking closely at the CGI because my eyesight isn't very good. But nevertheless, it was a good film to see. And it'll be interesting to see these characters in the Marvel Universe proper when they're facing off against Doctor Doom. Or maybe the Marvel characters will be going into that particular alternative universe. That was the alternative universe in that film was one where the 1960s didn't really change. And going into 70s, 80s, 90s, it was still kind of the 1960s. Okay, so I'm going to look at this issue, The Search for Reed Richards. This was a really landmark period for the Fantastic Four. John Byrne had taken over the creative reins of it. John Byrne was just he was just on all cylinders at this point. His art was great. The stories were great. Yeah, he was reworking a lot of stuff. So it wasn't necessarily that he was coming up with new ideas. He was sort of like taking previous ideas and kind of tinkering with them. But nevertheless, he did a great job tinkering. It was interesting for me reading this because at this point in my life, I think I'd kind of aged out of comic books. So the least amount of comic book reading I was doing was around the mid 80s. Although I would pick up a comic books from time to time, and I did read some of these stories. John Byrne's trajectory tended to be somewhat interesting for me because I was a kid of the 70s and the early 80s. John Byrne was a comic god. And I know by the 1990s, he was quickly becoming discredited among comic readers. Because I noticed that comic readers who were kind of a generation behind me, they could not stand John Byrne. And when I heard some of the nonsense that he was involved with, such as the Spider Clone saga, the second one, because I lived through the first one. The first one was basically set up so Peter could have a proper goodbye to Gwen. And Jerry Conway was just pleading with fans, please forget about this boring blonde and just move on to Mary Jane. But then there was this second Spider Clone saga where they said that, okay, now Peter Parker was actually the clone, even though they disproved that years earlier. The storyline was supposed to go on just for a couple of months. It ended up stretching out to a year and a half because they just completely lost the plot. So anyway, enough of that pontificating. The cover is a pretty good one. John Byrne at this point had taken control of the covers. The covers seem to subtly change, where I think the comic book covers when I was a kid largely focused on the action, whereas it appears that kind of in the mid-'80s where Marvel was concerned, the Marvel covers tended to focus more on what was going on in the story. So they actually kind of took a page from DC. DC used to focus on creating a cover that would, say, tempt the kids into buying that comic. And it tempted me a lot because I based my comic book buying on the covers. Marvel focused on the action. Then there was kind of a switch. DC tended to do more Marvel type covers, and then Marvel seemed to do more DC type covers, where again it was sort of like to tempt the reader into what's going on. And this is The Search for Reed Richards. So we're going to go into the story. And I'm going to take a look at this ad quickly for Burger Time. Again, I was aging out of these arcade games also. But this is the early days when home video cartridges were really popular. I remembered them. I think one of the rules was that you couldn't use them for more than an hour. Otherwise, they would screw up your TV set. And some of the games, by obviously today's standards, were not terribly challenging. Some of them were a lot of fun. I remember the Smurf game probably being the most fun. I don't remember this one, Burger Time, because as I had mentioned, I had started aging out of most video games. Turn the page. I'm going to see the splash page. The Search for Reed Richards. And the creative team is, as I had mentioned, John Byrne was, he had double duty. He was taking care of the story and the art. We're not given an inker, so it could be John Byrne himself. And Jim Shooter is doing something. It's listed as searching. Yeah, kind of like little kind of bear on the credits here, because I guess they wanted John to have as much credit as possible. So we see Namor here, and he's kind of giving Sue a big wet kiss here. Usually kisses like this were not consensual. And this kind of doesn't look consensual here. I think Sue was kind of caught by surprise. I don't know what was happening in the previous story. Sue and Namor always kind of had a thing, which I never quite understood. Namor, the guy, let's face it, he didn't have a 4-head. He had a 5-head. He had pointy ears like Mr. Spock, and he had little wings on his ankles. But nevertheless, Sue thought this guy was hot. Turn the page. So anyway, turns out there was some type of adventure going on. And it involved Alpha Flight, which is a book that John Byrne had been working on. I think he had initially took it on. It's kind of like a spin-off from the X-Men. I was never a big fan of Alpha Flight. As far as I'm concerned, Alpha Flight, the only thing Alpha Flight ever did was to make the bargain bin boxes heavier. That was it. I never liked this. I never liked the comic, although I thought some of the covers were pretty creative. So anyway, we see a member of Alpha Flight here, Marina, who's kind of like the water-based mutant of the group, and she's looking on. It seems like she's really excited about being here. She's on top of the Baxter Building. She's with the Submariner. She's with the Invisible Girl. I think they changed it to woman, but she's referring to her as the Invisible Girl. We see Sue and Namor. They're saying their goodbyes. It seems like they were never really officially an item, but it seems like they're on good terms with each other at this point. And it seems like Sue has moved on from Namor, because occasionally Sue would leave Reed. And Namor was kind of like, shall we say, her simp, because she can always run to Namor, and she would have the shoulder to cry on, and Namor would try to get her to like bounce on his knee, and kind of like it was sort of like it didn't really work out. So anyway, Namor and Marina, they're leaving on a good note here. And Namor is flying off, and he's going to take Marina to whatever unimportant mission Alpha Flight has next. Okay, so they're flying off and they're done with this story. Sue has kind of taken a leadership role here with the Fantastic Four. This is one of the things that John Byrne wanted to do, is that not only did he want to make her a more formidable presence in terms of her power, but also to make her a more assertive individual. One of the criticisms that did occur during the initial Stan Lee Jack Kirby run was the fact that Sue was sort of this weeping damsel in distress type character. And it was something that fans as early as 1963 were complaining about. But it fell on deaf ears to guys like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. When fans would say, "Hey, can you make Sue more assertive, less of a hindrance? She's always kind of getting in the way. She just serves as kind of like the hostage in most stories." Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, rather than sort of, okay, maybe we should build this character up, they kind of took this, hey, she's a chick type of response. And to his credit, John Byrne really kind of built this character up. So anyway, Sue's sort of taking a more assertive leadership role of the group. She's thinking about the previous battle with Dr. Doom. And she's kind of looking for the rest of the members of the Fantastic Four. At this point, I believe Dr. Doom had that battle with Terex. And it seemed like Dr. Doom had been destroyed forever, which, not going to happen. But this is where Sue's thoughts are, along with, where are the rest of the members of the team. Turn the page. So Sue's kind of looking through the Baxter building here. Now she knows that Reed had left earlier to the Avengers Mansion, so she's not really looking for him because she has an idea of where he is. The issue is, where is Johnny and where is Ben? However, it appears that Reed is taking longer than she thinks Reed should be at the Avengers Mansion. So he goes and she makes a call. Jarvis picks up the phone, and Jarvis kind of like gives Sue a little blockage, for the lack of a better word here. He's just saying, well, they're not available at the moment, and stuff is going on. And, I don't know where your husband is. So Jarvis, I think, is intentionally being cryptic here. And Sue is noticing this. So she's thinking about what's going on here. And there is a voice calling her off panel. Turn the page. I'm going to take a look at this ad. One of the things I noticed about this comic is that there is a lot of content here, and there are not too many ads. This is for Saturdays on ABC. I was not watching any of these shows. We see the best of Scooby-Doo, the Little Rascals Richie Rich show. I think I saw maybe some of the early cartoon episodes of Little Rascals, but like I said, I'd aged out. The Moncheks, I have no idea. Pac-Man, no interest in that. Rubik's The Amazing Cube, I could never do that. I had a friend who can solve it in like seconds, and me, I never solved it. The Littles, the Puppies' Further Adventures, and the new Scooby and Scrappy-Doo. And also, apparently, you get to see Menudo. Menudo. I went to a junior high school that was largely Latino, and oh my God, the amount of I would hear whenever Menudo was mentioned was amazing. Turn the page. So it turns out that the voice calling Sue is the Silver Surfer. Now, last time I saw the Silver Surfer, the surfer had tits. This surfer has no tits, but he might not have a Johnson, because that package there where his bathing suit is, it's kind of smooth. So in one way or another, Silver Surfer, he's kind of a chick. So anyway, Sue's asking how the Silver Surfer is, because the Silver Surfer helped out in that fight with Terex and Doctor Doom, and the Silver Surfer was involved. Silver Surfer helped out the Fantastic Four. Sue is obviously very appreciative of this. But I guess the Silver Surfer's kind of a good guess, because he was very quiet, very respectful. I think he was just kind of resting. And Sue had actually kind of forgotten about him. Sue's like, hey, I can trust this guy. He's not going to look in our medicine cabinets. He's not going to, check out my panties in my drawers. He's not going to eat somebody's food from the refrigerator. So the Silver Surfer's kind of a good guess, and it's easy to forget about him. It seems like Sue is explaining what had happened in the Avengers mansion. And the Silver Surfer doesn't really have a good idea exactly what it is, because apparently there was a beam. Jarvis had shared with Sue that some type of some beam had entered the Avengers mansion. And because Reed can't be found, and because of this beam, Sue's kind of worried that maybe there's a connection here. Silver Surfer believes that, hey, yeah, there might be a connection, but I actually kind of have to look into things first. And then we go to a Queens parking lot, because apparently, like, this huge battle occurred in the borough of Queens. Nothing terribly interesting was going on in Queens at this time. Even the Mets weren't very good in Queens. So this might have been the biggest thing that had happened there in a while. Some people are still talking about the fight with Doctor Doom and the Silver Surfer and Terex. However, from the kind of debris that's left of the battlefield, turns out the Silver Surfer had left his board there, and he's currently summoning it. So Silver Surfer, he's ready to assist Sue Richards here a bit more actively. Turn the page. Suddenly the Silver Surfer's board comes through. Sue is very impressed with it. The two are going to take off. Here's kind of a nice little moment, is before Sue actually gets on the board, she's going to tie her hair in a ponytail here. It's kind of secured, make sure it's not blowing in her eyes. It's a small little thing, but I think it was small little things like this that people did appreciate John Byrne doing. So the two of them take off, and they're heading to the Avengers mansion. So this is just another spot, another part of Manhattan. I think the Avengers mansion is actually based on the Fort Frick Gallery, or Fort Frick Museum, I should say. And that's on the east side of Manhattan. Turn the page. And we see this again. The Avengers mansion is a little worn from an earlier battle that had happened. So it looks like the mansion has been breached. So this is kind of a serious thing. And it looks like it looks like something like the Mole Man would leave, although it clearly isn't the case here. And the breach appears to be in the medical facilities of the Avengers mansion here. And we see the Vision. He's kind of in this stasis field. I don't know what was going on with his health at this point, but it appears that it was something that Reed Richards was working on. And we see Wanda here. Wanda's very concerned, obviously, for her husband. Again, a guy made of plastic, but, hey, she loves it. And we see the surfer and Sue. They come in and they start discussing what's going on with the Scarlet Witch here. I believe what happened is the Scarlet Witch seems a little reluctant to speak to Sue specifically, because I got the impression that the Scarlet Witch, while she was with Reed, was not in the room at the time where this sort of ray had occurred. So what had happened was Reed was working on the vision. I think the Scarlet Witch, she probably went out for some coffee. She had left the room for a moment, and when she came back, she noticed this huge breach in their citadel, their mansion, and she noticed that Reed was gone. So she doesn't really know exactly what happened, but she kind of knows what's going on. And this is what Wanda is imparting to Sue. Turn the page. Now, it turns out that Silver Surfer actually has powers that are very convenient at the moment. So what's going on is that the two Earthlings, Sue and Wanda, they're very confused about what's going on. Silver Surfer, however, he says that there is enough energy in the room, residual energy from this beam, that he can actually reconstruct what had happened with this beam. And he does so, and it turns out that the beam was to capture Reed. So it had breached the Avengers Mansion, and it had kind of captured and elevated Reed out of the area, similar to what, it's kind of like a Star Trek transporter here. Silver Surfer, he had a suspicion about what was going on. This confirmed it, that Reed indeed was, taken into custody or apprehended by this beam. And at this point, Silver Surfer really can't help Sue, because even though he has an answer as to what had happened in the mansion, he also knows that this beam, wherever it came from, and whoever abducted Reed Richards, they're gone, and he can't leave Earth's orbit because of the judgment that Galactus had put on him. And Galactus had set it up so the Silver Surfer could never leave Earth. And that was a tale told much earlier. Turn the page. So what happened now, since Sue has kind of a good idea about what's going on, she sends out the flare for the other members of the Fantastic Four. And then we see the Thing, and we see Johnny Storm, and they're discussing the events as to what happened to Reed. And it turns out that Sue has taken the initiative of contacting another being that would be able to help them in their search for Reed Richards, because already the Silver Surfer is out of the game. He can't even leave the orbit, much less transverse, the galaxies. Fantastic Four, they have the ability to go out into space. it's kind of like not easy for them because the speeds that their ships run at aren't as fast as other alien races that they encountered. And I had mentioned earlier, space travel's kind of dirty. You got to recycle that air. You can't let it go. You spit, you take a piss, you have to take a dump. You can't like jettison that stuff into space. So that stuff has to stay in the spaceship. And the walls are greasy, and you got to smell everyone's sweat. And these guys are like, oh fuck no, they don't want to go through that, even for Reed. But Sue's saying, don't worry, I've taken care of that part. I just got to keep it under wraps. And Sue is letting the other members know that this is a mission. This is not a quest. This is a mission. We are on a mission to find my husband. And we are going to follow through on that. Turn the page. So then we see the three members of the Fantastic Four. They fly off into space. So Sue kind of made it clear, like, they're not taking this, the pogo plane, or whatever they call it. They're not taking it the entire mission. They're just going to go for a stopover until they can get in touch with their contact. And again, this gives John Byrne an opportunity to kind of to retell the origin of the Fantastic Four, because here we see a flashback of the team in their first mission. John Byrne kind of liked going back to things that Jack Kirby did and kind of being, hey, I can do it better than you. He did that a lot. John Byrne and Jack Kirby did not like each other. They kind of had a rivalry. A lot of it was not necessarily personal, but it was philosophical, where Kirby was really fighting for creators' rights, and that an artist does more than just simply draw a story. They put their heart and souls in it, and if they create something that resonates with the public, and it creates Marvel a great deal of money, Jack Kirby was like, hey, we should share in that. And a lot of the comic book companies, particularly like Martin Goodman and kind of later Stan Lee, were like, hey, we're the ones who are putting our true skin in the game, money. We're the ones you can put in all this creative effort as you want, but if it doesn't sell, we're taking the loss. You're still getting your paycheck. And that was sort of like the kind of the philosophical differences between the talent and the management. And John Byrne was sort of a company guy. He was very proud of this. He always tended to side with management. Although later in his life, he didn't do that, because he realized that there was validity with what guys like Jack Kirby said, although John Byrne never admitted this. But John Byrne was very much a management guy. He was usually the most talented person employed, whether he was at Marvel or Charleston at DC. So he was kind of a privileged employee, so he can afford to kind of take that stance. And this caused kind of friction between him and Kirby. And so anyway, going back to this, we're seeing kind of a reimagining of the origin story, as the Fantastic Four are flashing back to when they originally went to space, because they're heading toward the cosmic storm area. So apparently the cosmic rays where the Fantastic Four gain their powers, apparently this is sort of like a stasis area where those storms are always raging. And turn the page. And again, John Byrne gets to spend an entire page retelling the origin of the Fantastic Four. This does two things. One, John Byrne gets to say, "Ha ha, Jack Kirby, I can do it better than you." And it also means that John Byrne doesn't have to think of any original material for at least a page and a half here. So we're seeing just kind of a reimagining of the Fantastic Four. Turn the page. Going to take a look at the fan page here. See what the kids are talking about. Okay, the first item is a warning to sort of I guess fans and speculators that apparently there's been a number of fraudulent drawings that were attributed to John Byrne that John Byrne himself did not draw. Sometimes what the artists would do is they would often want their original art returned to them, so when they go to comic conventions, they can sell them and make extra money. Rich Buckler did this a lot, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. The one time that I did see Rich Buckler at a comic convention, I think it was the early 2000s, he had the original art to, I think, Fantastic Four 166, that I think he was selling for $2,000 at the time. If someone bought it, it probably was a good deal, because I'm sure something like that would be sold for more than that. Now, I don't know how much of a market there is. That was the one problem with comic books as collectibles, is that some of these prices were high, but there really weren't very many people who would pay those prices. And it's similar to, like, diamonds. Like, if you're going to get married, you buy your fiance a diamond ring. And the idea was that if you turned out to be a jerk or anything happened to you, at least she would have this valuable piece of merchandise, for lack of a better word, that she can resell. Do diamonds really have high resale value? Because it's not like the world is running out of them. I mean, I would hear stories like, Kobe Bryant's wife had like a $4 million ring. Could she really get $4 million for that rock? So, So what they're saying is that that if you have any doubts to whether something is fraudulent or not, you can mail it to John Byrne himself, and he'll take a look at it. And add a stamped self-addressed envelope. Okay, so first letter is from Brenda. Brenda is happy that Sue is becoming more assertive. But she dislikes the idea of Sue being pregnant, because I think John Byrne had made Sue have another child. The problem with that in Brenda's eyes is that it ties her up to taking care of the baby. And it means that, at a time where you kind of really have this character kind of rocking, you're going to take her out of the picture because she's going to have to take care of the kid. Editorial does give her an answer, and they're not really giving her a direct answer, but they're saying, don't worry, John Byrne did not invest all this time to build up Sue's character just to sideline her. So at least Brenda's getting a little bit of confirmation that, your fears are a little unwarranted. We're not going to, push Sue to the sidelines. Another letter. It's kind of a joke letter. And talking about Sue's lasagna for some reason. And the next letter, again, talking about the upcoming pregnancy as to whether the child will be a mutant or not. Because I think they established that Franklin Richards is a mutant. And also the movie established that the kid is a mutant. Franklin, I believe. And we see another letter kind of advocating Galactus Nova miniseries. And see this next letter. They're talking about Galactus. And yeah, I'm kind of having a hard time figuring out what's going on here. And there's a little mention of the A-Team. Apparently, issue number 253 of the Fantastic Four was briefly shown in an episode of the A-Team, and they have the Thing as Mr. T. I ain't getting in no spaceship, Richards. If you remember, that was the whole thing about Mr. T's character on the A-Team, was that he disliked flying. And they gave you kind of a preview to the next issue. And it's telling you that it's Assistant Editors Month, which means that the main editors were probably in San Diego at the time. Okay, so you can turn the page. Take a look at this one ad for Punch and Juicy, bubblegum. It was a great time for bubblegum at the time in the late 70s, early 80s. And it looks like the flashbacks were Ben Grimm's thoughts, and he's kind of pontificating about what had happened from that first issue to issue 263 here. But it turns out Ben's kind of daydreaming here, and because they're kind of close to their destination, and it's the blue area of the moon. And if you remember, the blue area of the moon is the one part of the moon that does have oxygen, and it's home of the Watcher. And we could see a little bit of the Watcher's domain. I think also the Inhumans. Their home had been transported to the moon. I'm sure every hero in the Marvel Universe is thrilled about this. Black Bolt is a terrible leader. He is consistently being overthrown. And they're just like, thank God we don't have to bail this a-hole out. So the team, they land in front of the Watcher's home. Turn the page. And at first, Johnny seems a little perplexed as to how they're supposed to enter the home. But Sue says, don't you remember? You just simply walk through. And that's exactly what happens. The home of the Watcher is somewhat disorienting to the three members of the Fantastic Four here. They make it clear it's something that's like beyond the senses, or barely beyond the senses of human eyes. Wolverine had visited the Watcher's home unintentionally. He got thrown out pretty hard, and he was even freaking out. And Johnny Storm, he's a little bit of a hothead. He's a little bit impatient. He decides to fly off, but very quickly, because of the issues with the dimensions, because humans can only perceive things in three dimensions. Johnny is immediately thrown for a loop here, and he's quite confused. Sue is angry with her younger brother, because he's saying, listen, I had warned you about that asshole. And then suddenly a voice cries out. And even Ben Grimm is sort of, taken aback by it. Turn the page. And we take a look at what is going on Saturday morning on NBC. Now, I was still watching a lot of this stuff at the time. Their big cartoon was Mr. T.
Hey, boy, you look mighty cute in them jeans.
It's really hard to mention how big Mr. T was at this moment. The Smurfs were huge. Please watch that one scene from Donnie Darko about the Smurfs. The Hulk had his own TV show along with Spider-Man and his amazing friends. That would be Iceman and Firestar. I was watching those. Alvin and the Chickmunks. That's a cartoon. It's a novelty cartoon. Every few years, it seemed like they were trying to bring that back. And again, the novelty wore thin fast. Although There was this one thing with Alvin and the Chipmunks, and it was a special episode of there was a kid show and talent and lip syncing. What was it called?
Hi, I'm Michael Young. Join me this week for a special version of Putting on the Kids. It's our Christmas show. You'll see some of your favorite stars lip sync to some classic holiday hits. Tiffany Brissett and Danny Pintaro, Elon, Heather O'Rourke, Alfonso Rivera, Desrita Jackson, the Gold Sisters, Brandy, Missy, and Tracy, and Kirk Cameron. They're all with us for our very special holiday lip sync show. Join us on this station for some holiday cheer. That's Putting on the Kids.
Sunday morning at 7.
But anyway, there was this really embarrassing moment where Kurt Cameron was playing the professor character in Alvin and Chipmunks, and the three Chipmunks were the Gold Sisters. The best known is Tracy Gold. She was on Family Matters with Kurt Cameron. And there was also the other sister who was on Benson, and there was a third sister, and they were playing the Chipmunks. And that bit was so embarrassing. And Tracy Gold actually said that her father would torment her by putting that episode on, like, every Christmas. And Tracy just had to watch it in embarrassment. What else is going on? The Flintstones. The updated iterations of the Flintstones never caught on like the originals. There was Shirt Tales, never watched that. And there was Thundar, the Barbarian, which I remember being on ABC originally. And Jack Kirby worked on that cartoon series. So we go to the story and we see the Watcher. The Watcher shows up here. He kind of looks like the Gerber baby here. But nevertheless, Watcher is an important and respected character in the Marvel Universe. He does have a special friendship with the Fantastic Four. Ben is kind of like treating the Watcher as kind of like an old buddy. Sue is admonishing him. By the way, Sue has a rockin' body here. She looks her outfit looks like she's in yoga pants here. And anyway, Sue wants Ben to be a bit more respectful to the Watcher because they're asking him for a big favor. And it's one that involves probably violating his oath, which he has done in the past. But nevertheless, Sue does not take anything for granted. She realizes, hey, we have to ask this guy for a huge favor. We have to be as respectful as possible. We can't take this for granted, and Ben, I need you to kind of shut up. However, it seems like the Watcher is aware of what is going to be asked of him, and he seems to know a bit more than what Sue knows, but he hasn't revealed that yet. So Sue asks, where her brother is. She wants all the members together. The Watcher is well aware that Johnny Storm is lost in the home. He knows Johnny's intentions. He knows Johnny wasn't being a wise ass, that he wasn't damaging things. Kind of like he wasn't giving any lip, like Wolverine was giving the Watcher lip. But Johnny wasn't. And the Watcher's being very magnanimous about this, saying, hey, I know he's here now. He hasn't been damaging things, and it's fine. Watcher's being pretty relaxed here. Anyway, the Watcher does say, listen, you guys got to be careful about this place. It's not dangerous. It's home for me, but it's hell for you. And they're getting prepared to go. So the Watcher kind of knows where to go, and they're moving at speeds that are beyond comprehension to the human mind. And finally, the Watcher takes them to their destination. This is where Reed Richards is. Gonna take a look at this ad. It's for model cars. Never had any interest in that. I never had any interest in cars. To me, cars were just vehicles that you go from one place to another. But other than that, they all look like, piles of junk to me. And it drove my friends crazy because they would see, like, sometimes they would see, like, these classic cars, these lowriders, and I just look at them like, they're just hunks of junk. Take a look at another ad. It's for the subscription service. The offer ends in October 31st, 1983. So again, this comic probably came out in September, October on the newsstand. And they're really pushing the subscription service. So basically, rather than paying the 60-cent cover price, you ended up paying 41 cents per copy. And it's a couple of the larger issues like What If that a little bit more pricey. So I'm going to turn the page. And the four of them arrive. And they arrive kind of like in the middle of this huge space armada here. And some of these ships, they look somewhat new. A lot of them look pretty old. They're millions of years old by human standards of time. And Sue's asking, why are there so many ships here? Because, there's a lot of ships, different types of insignias, designs, ages. But the Watcher says they're survivors. And it turns out they're survivors of Galactus. When Galactus devours a world, he destroys everything, and he destroys everyone who's there. So nothing that's alive survives Galactus. However, there are a few people, I guess they were able to get off the planet in time. There were a few people or a few beings, I should say, who were out in space, and they heard through, long-range communications that their planet had been destroyed. But they still survive. And I guess they kind of team up together. They have that one bond that it was the same being that destroyed their homeworld. I guess it kind of makes sense from like a human point of view, because often when people who are survivors of trauma, they will often seek out and kind of share experiences with other people who had similar trauma. This way, they kind of feel like less othered, and they're kind of reminded that these are things that had happened to them, rather than things that were done to them. So I guess this might be kind of a kind of like an emotional psychological. I don't want to say crutch, but I'm gonna have to say crutch, for lack of a better word, for these beings. And the Watcher, being the Watcher, he kind of like they stop at the one ship that does have who they're looking for, which is Reed Richards. Turn the page. By the way, the art is really good here. Again, John Byrne might have inked this stuff. John Byrne was amazingly fast for someone who was able to produce such high quality work. I'm sure John probably worked with the best inkers. So, when you look at the X-Men, how much of that was John Byrne, how much of that was Terry Austin? That was the same question being asked when Neil Adams was doing the X-Men. Now, how much of that was Neil Adams? How much of that was Tom Palmer? But nevertheless, John Byrne was able to produce a great deal of high-quality work very quickly. I think also at this time he was might have been working on the Avengers and a few other issues, a few other titles. One of the things I noticed is he tends to draw the Thing much differently than other artists. There's definitely some abstract here. And I had noticed one thing about John Byrne, and I'd seen it in other issues. He doesn't draw the best hands. So these might be some shortcuts. He might have had a reason for drawing the Thing this way. It tends to look a little bit more abstract. And so anyway, the four of them are on this ship. It does have breathable air for them. Turn the page. And the four are greeted by a council of these sort of these lost souls who have had their homeworld destroyed, their lives torn apart, and they kind of look again what you would expect to find in a bar in Tatooine, or I don't know what the hell they call it. So they're speaking to the Fantastic Four. It is noted that they are using universal translators. And the leader of this council, XR, he's being very gracious. He this guy is a protocol. He is like R2D2. He knows his protocol. And he is being very accommodating to the Fantastic Four. He's being very respectful, saying, "Listen, dudes, we know about you. Hey, Marvel even mails out comics out here, and we enjoy your adventures." And the thing is that obviously the rest of the members of the Fantastic Four, and the Watchers. They want to know where Reed is, and again, their host XR is being very gracious, and of course he's leading them right to it, and they're asking questions. I think Ben is name dropping E.T. here, which of course was the big movie at the time, E.T. And apparently they've been walking through this very large spaceship. And however, they are told, here is Reed. This is the guy you're looking for. Turn the page. And we see Reed. His ass is being tortured here. He is being put on a wheel here. He is being electric shocked. He is being stretched to, I guess, some of his limits. In the new Fantastic Four film, you didn't really see too much of Reed Richards stretching. And there was one point where Galactus was sort of treating him like a piece of bubble gum, just kind of testing the limits of how far he can stretch him. So you get to see that Reed is undergoing he's undergoing a few things here. Reed is conscious, although he's saying, you guys need to leave here. So at this point, Reed has given up. Sue is horrified by what she sees, along with the other members of the Fantastic Four. The guest, the host of this delegation of devoured worlds is telling them that, hey, we're executing this guy. That's all, nothing more than that. And then there was a retelling of some of the events that happened in Fantastic Four I would say about 2 years earlier, Issue number 244, that was about 20 issues ago. It was monthly at this point, so a little less than 2 years ago. They're re-going some events. This is when Galactus got defeated on Earth. And they're retelling what happened is that after Galactus got his ass kicked, and they kind of honestly should have just simply walked away and kind of let him go. Reed Richards had saved Galactus, and Galactus was allowed to venture off Earth to find another world to devour. And it turned out that he had devoured the Skrull throne world, because the Skrulls are ruled by a royalty. And he had destroyed that world, took its energies for his own. And it says about 7 billion Skrulls had perished in this event. So this new kind of haven, this new colony of ships that deals with, worlds that had been devoured by Galactus, they have to deal with the Skrulls now. And they're saying, listen, we're kind of open-minded. We have this one thing that bonds us. But that said, these Skrulls are fucking assholes. And yes, by our own edict, we have to accept them. But God damn it, we really didn't want to do that. And fuck you for saving Galactus, so we have to deal with these assholes. So that's kind of their point of view. Ben thing. He's not sympathetic to this. And in fact, he's even saying something that is later contradicted. He's saying, "Listen, Galactus murdered all those Skrulls. You guys should be giving him a medal. Do you know how huge those assholes are throughout the galaxy?" However, this guy Xandar, he's not buying it. I don't know what his name is. He's not buying that argument because now because they're refugees, they have to accept these assholes. So he's not going to look at it this way. He's not saying, hey, those guys didn't bother us before. So anyway, he goes. Ben Grimm goes on the offense against this guy, but this is a confederation that has extremely powerful technology at their hands. They use it against Ben Grimm. Johnny wants to get into the fray. However, Sue is saying, "Listen, we need cooler heads to prevail here." I think Sue is somewhat sympathetic toward their point of view. I mean, she clearly wants her husband back and not murdered. But at the same time, she seems a bit more understanding as to what's motivating these survivors. And she's trying to use the point saying, "Listen, I understand that you have a grudge against this guy. Like, he destroyed your whole world, your entire culture, your loved ones, and so forth. Kind of understand that. But at the same time, I kind of love my husband, and we don't think he should be punished for this." Funny, Jim Shooter didn't feel that way about Phoenix, though. This guy, he's not buying it. He's not backing down either. This guy's a tough guy. And Thing is kind of taking... he's taking the position that, listen, we can't talk to these guys. We can't talk our way out of this. We're going to have to use force, but we're going to have to figure things out because these guys are pretty formidable. And Ben kind of takes things into his own hands. He says, "Listen, I'm going to show you how it's done." And he grabs the wheel that Reed is chained to, and he just tears it apart. And he frees Reed here. Although Reed is telling Ben, "Hey, you got to be a little careful here. Because, hey, I'm attached to this thing." And Ben's kind of saying, "Shut up, I'm freeing you." However, the space delegation and the aliens on this ship, they're not going to go down without a fight. So they're getting armored up. And they're saying, "Listen, kill these guys if you have to." However, the Watcher intervenes. Watcher is a guy who doesn't like intervening, but he does intervene. And he does so because he's saying, "Listen, there are matters involved here that supersede my oath of non-interference." We saw this in Star Trek. Occasionally, they would, violate the Prime Directive. And this is what the Watcher's doing. He's violating his Prime Directive. I'm going to turn the page. And we have the bullpen bulletins. And honestly, nothing really interesting is being said here. They're just saying that the main editors are going to be in San Diego for the Comic-Con, which means that kind of the assistant editors are going to be left in charge. They're not going to be fully in charge. They're going to have to run everything by Jim Shooter, so they're going to have to call him every night. But nevertheless, they're kind of saying, "Listen, we're kind of giving our mid-level talent an opportunity to shine." This is sort of the September call-ups, when baseball teams would bring up their top prospects in September when they got to expand the rosters. Nothing interesting, honestly, is being said. take a look at the comics at the time. I wasn't really reading comics at this point, so the issues here don't really mean much. Apparently X-Men is up to 176, and John Romita Jr., who is a pretty good artist, he's taking over the drawing reins. And take a look at another ad. Apparently it's a James Bond related property, and I have no idea what it is. It's a role-playing game. So you get to role play as James Bond. These were kind of popular at the time. I think Dungeons and Dragons was the breakout thing. And there were a bunch of others, but this one is one where you can role play as James Bond. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the story. Everyone has cooled down. The aliens in charge of this spaceship, they're holding a council here, and the Fantastic Four, including Reed, is involved here, and they're listening to both sides. The again, this alien armada, this confederation of beings who had their world destroyed by Galactus, they're being kind of magnanimous here, saying, hey, maybe there was a good reason that in your mind that you had done this, and we reacted hastily for wanting you dead, for helping the murderer of our loved ones. But nevertheless, they're still convinced that Galactus is a menace, and that Reed's actions were just simply elongated this being's existence, who has done so much harm. Reed is speaking here in his defense. He says, "There is little I can truly say, if it is a defense of my actions that you seek. The Skrulls are, or were, the most relentlessly evil race in their galaxy. Yet human compassion demands that I mourn their passing, and nothing will ever relieve me of my part, directly or otherwise, in their annihilation. Yet that same compassion is what drove me to save Galactus. Yes, it would have been easier to allow him to die, and there are those who would argue that. But who are we to make such a decision, to allow another living being, any living being, to die, when ours is the power to prevent it?" Okay. This is definitely a Jean-Luc Picard moment for Reed Richards here. Definitely the Star Trek writers were fans of comic books, because you can kind of see this stuff in Star Trek. Reed was offering the human point of view. The Watcher's kind of making the Star Wars argument here, saying that Galactus does serve a purpose in the universe, and he helps maintain the balance of the Force. That's basically what he's doing. So the Watcher's kind of making the Star Wars argument here. Some of these individuals who are representative of these destroyed worlds, they seem to be somewhat persuaded by these arguments here. It says a lot about them, about the fact that they're going to overlook what had happened to their homeworlds. However, they want to contemplate what's going on and kind of rethink, and maybe they should rethink about the situation. However, there's a voice that says no. And that is Leandra. And she is the Empress of the Shi'ar Empire. And she's taken it upon herself, because this doesn't just involve the worlds that were destroyed by Galactus. The Shi'ar Empire, they have a lot of worlds in their umbrella as an empire, and they're kind of concerned about this being who destroys them. And they're saying, hey, we have a voice in what's going on. We took care of the Phoenix. We could take care of Galactus. And however, Leandra's not looking to pick a fight with Galactus. She is looking to pick a fight with Reed Richards over what had happened over the Skrull homeworld. Now, if you remember in X-Men 137, Leandra does have official contacts with both the Creeds and with the Skrulls. She doesn't like either one of them, but because of their empires and their power, she has to listen to them. And she's obviously taking the case for the Skrulls. The Creeds are celebrating at this point. She probably asked them, "Hey, do you want to take part in this trial of Reed Richards?" The Creeds are like, "Dude, Bird Lady, we want to throw this guy a party, so we're going to take a pass on that." But obviously, the remaining Skrulls throughout the galaxy, they're going to want to have a say in this. And Leandra says, "For his unspeakable crimes against all things that live, Reed Richards must die." Dun dun dun. And it says there's going to be a guest star. I wonder who it is during the trial of Galactus. So that's the story. Take a look at a couple of other ads. This is for Starfronts. This is TSR Hobbies. Again, this is sort of the role-playing thing. There are not as many ads in this issue because Jim Shooter, he had ordered an audit into ad revenue, because when Jim Shooter joined Marvel, he was told that the ads were the revenue driver and not the sales of the comics themselves. This didn't sound right to Jim Shooter, so he had ordered an audit to figure out what was going on, and he found out that actually the ad revenue wasn't as much as it looked on the books, and that was because the cost that are associated with the ads, because the paper being used, the inks being used, the commissions that are being paid out to the salespeople, those costs were not being attributed to the sales division. So for years, the sales division and the ads, they were generating huge amounts of revenue. But the thing was, the cost associated with running those ads wasn't included. And once they figured things out, Marvel found out that they were actually losing money on those ads. So when you look at some of those older late 70s, early 80s comic books with all those comic book ads, Marvel was actually losing a lot of money. And then once this validated what Jim Shooter had suspected, and because of this, they cut down on the amount of ads. So, and that allowed Marvel to add more content to their comics. And this is an example of it. And this was a good story. See another ad for Mattel Electronics. They were competing with Atari at the time. This is the Kool-Aid Man video game. Never played it. Kool-Aid was very fortunate at this time, because in 1978 there was obviously the tragedy at Jonestown, where nearly 1,000 people were killed, murdered, depending on how you feel about it, by poison Kool-Aid that was mixed in with cyanide, and those people died painful deaths. And the term, drinking the Kool-Aid came from that. And normally, most products probably would have slowly died, no pun intended, but Kool-Aid was able to kind of hold on. That's just, they say, no publicity is bad publicity. That's kind of bad publicity when you're associated with Jim Jones. And another video game ad. This is Qbert. This is a game I was aware of, but I never played. It's by Parker Brothers. And that's it. And that is my review of Fantastic Four number 261. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.